Good morning, Commissioners. Asa Grey for the record. A couple things I want to highlight. I wanted to highlight our voter turnout this election. We had a countywide average of 34.6% voter turnout, which is, I would say, higher than some elections we see. Obviously not as high as our general elections, but it's on point with...
36.4.
Oh, sorry, 36.4. Excuse me, I misspoke. Forgive me for that.
It's about equal to November.
It's time.
Yep, so it was right around the range of our November city elections and on point with higher than primaries we've had in the past as well, especially higher than 18. A couple other things I want to point out. We did have just over 6,000 voters vote by absentee ballot and 2,244 voters voted early. Couple things that we can, have some improvement on is we did have, as noted both on the narrative and in the abstract, we did have 5 absentee ballots that were cured by voters. In other words, they had an issue, a mismatched signature, missing signature, something like that, cured by voters on election day itself that did not end up going in with the rest of the ballots and getting opened and getting counted. So in order to preserve the constitutional right of voters' secrecy, we did not, when we found these after the fact, we did not go add them and run them through the tabulator because it would be very obvious how these voters had voted then if those counts were to increase by 1 in those precincts. But just something for us to note in our canvas as well. A few other things we want to talk about. Jim already mentioned the duplications and when there was, a ballot that had to be duplicated because of hesitation marks or something, how that slowed us down with having to duplicate all the write-ins as well. We did have 3 duplication boards by the end of by that time of the morning. We did have 3 duplication boards going round the clock for those extra 3.5 hours, trying to get those done as efficiently as possible. We also had a write-in board for most of the night that was tallying the write-in votes because, as may or may not be known, our tabulators count and kick out ballots that have a write-in vote where there has been a valid write-in candidate filed for that office, but it cannot determine the name that is written in on the line. So our write-in board has to go determine if that is a valid write-in candidate, and if so, the vote should count for them, or if it is a what we call undeclared, I believe it is, write-in, where it's not someone who is an official write-in candidate for that office. This election, we had 6 write-in candidates for precinct committee seats, and we also had 3 write-in candidates at the gubernatorial level, 2 on the Democratic Party side, 1 on the Constitution Party side. So we did have multiple votes cast for those candidates that we had to then tally. You can see in your narrative under poll worker performance, you can see that 99.7% of our ballots had 0 ballot issuance errors, and that is high, like we like to see it. We do have a list of some small errors that were made at precincts. Typically, there were no more than 2 or 3 errors made in a precinct, and many precincts did not have any errors. But ones that had any errors, you can see here on this list. If there's any questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer them. I won't go through them one by one and bore you with the detail because you can see that there. And then we actually did not have quite as many registrations this election as we've seen in some bigger elections in the past. I attribute that to the fact that we had a lot of registrations happen ahead of time with both community efforts from groups to get people registered for the primary or just in general, and also because we did have redistricting and the precinct changes, we notified voters of their new precincts ahead of time, so hopefully there were less issues with people showing up at the wrong place as well and having to be sent elsewhere. In addition to, obviously that's not a registration, but in addition to that, I think that was a helpful thing as well. I do want to point out we did have a new registration form this election that the state created specifically for the primary, and that is something that did make it a little more complex because things were in different places on the cards. And so for the poll workers, that was just an added layer of things they had to watch for and deal with.